This is my third summer meeting this summer, and it is also my third year of doing summer meetings. So I want to tell you that generally speaking, we in the city are in very good shape. We are having a boom year in terms of construction. Year to date, we are ahead of where we were last year in terms of permits and construction value, and last year was a record year. If we continue on this track, we will have outperformed 2003, 2007, 2009, and again, 2011. So I can tell you that, but most importantly, those of you here know that that's true, because when you go downtown and other places, there are cranes in the air. There is a lot of construction, road construction, retail, residential, business construction. Particularly down in this area, we've been doing a lot of building with houses in partnership with Syracuse Housing. We're starting to see those go up. We are in the midst of renovating 4 schools and completing the first phase of the Joint School Construction Board. We anticipate that Fowler will be renovated and open at the beginning of this school year. H.W. Smith is is under renovation. Dr. Weeks is ahead of schedule for renovations. And ITC is also ahead of schedule and will also be open this year in its downtown location. Also, we have our partners here from Say Yes to Education who have joined us. Today was the last day of the summer programming for Say Yes to Education. So I spent a great part of the day running from one Say Yes Education site to another. They continue to do a fantastic job. We have thousands of students who are both improving their skills and maintaining their skills by being involved with Say Yes to Education. Say Yes to Education is now in all 4 quadrants, and we're continuing to make progress in that as well. We have plans underway to install more security cameras from the police in this area, particularly Midland Ave and others. Those cameras, the council voted to allow us to buy those cameras with grant funding. Those cameras are going to be put in locations that are driven by numbers. And so in this area in particular, there are certain corners where you're going to start to see cameras being put up. We're going to be utilizing those to help us solve crimes, prevent crimes from happening, and in general be a deterrent. Had great success with those in other areas of the city, and we're continuing to move forward with that. Also, in terms of housing, we have been approached by developers to take down the Cedar House on South Salina Street, and we're moving forward with trying to put that project together so that eyesore in the next year will be down, and that will be welcome. About a month ago, we were able to have a ribbon cutting for a Tops grocery store on South Salina Street. That has been a 3-year project of my administration to get a grocery store back there, and they anticipate that it will be open in time for Thanksgiving. So that is also good news in terms of economic development in this area generally. So we're making progress and we're moving forward, but obviously there is still a lot to do and a lot of issues. So with that, let me throw it open and see if anybody has a specific question.
So my big concern is we really need some cameras from Midland and Ostrander, down Ostrander to 400 block, down that way to the back streets that go over to Newell and those back streets over there. They are ferocious with drugs and all kinds of stuff that's going on.
Well, ma'am, I'm here and I hear you, and the chief is here too. And again, as I say we, but where the police department decides to put those cameras is driven by data. So the fact that you are talking about those kind of shots fired and that activity is going to be measured in our data, and we're going to put those cameras where they belong, and they're going to have some here in this neighborhood, and the chief afterwards can talk to you about where we think in general that they're going to be. But this is a neighborhood that's going to get that attention. And by the way, when we first went in front of the council to put security cameras in the near west side, we got a lot of pushback from people saying they weren't sure that they were going to do the job, they weren't going to be a deterrent, they weren't going to help for enforcement, they were going to be a problem with privacy. And we pushed forward and said that this is the kind of tool that we need to use to stop crime and also to help us enforce the law. And what we've seen in our experience with the cameras has been nothing but positive, and the neighbors in that area too, so they've been a very effective tool. In terms of speeding, what you can tell us is if there is a certain time of day or place where it is particularly bad, and we can try to stop it, but the reality is, as you talk about, that we have police officers down here who are chasing burglaries and shots fired and issues like that, and in those kind of crimes, speeding is not as high a priority, and obviously if they're speeding, you know, you can't go someplace and see them. They're speeding by. So that's what we've had some particular luck in other neighborhoods where we know if there's a particularly popular place or street with no stop signs where people speed through, that we've been able to have some speed traps and catch people, and it slows them down for a little bit. Anyway. Yes, sir.
I spoke with the chief in reference to the 500 block of West Corbin, and that's from Midland Ave to Hope Avenue. My wife and I lives at in a 500 block. 2 vacant houses before our house, then a vacant house down below our house. I mean, it's complete eyesore. I have called in. They have found numerous guns behind some of these vacant houses. Kids hang out there all day, and it is getting bad. I got a gunshot, bullet shot in one of my bedroom windows. My front porch got gunshots in it. And if you go down there now, there's kids just constantly hanging out there. Doesn't live in the neighborhood. Every day I pick up a garbage can full of trash from that store. Can we do something about the 500 block of West Corbin Street?
Of course we can, and we will. Let me talk about a couple of the basic issues that you were talking about in terms of vacant property, which is also related to tax delinquent property. We have thousands of properties that are vacant in the city of Syracuse, and we can't cut and mow and keep track of them to the way that we should be doing, so they do become eyesores. And even as we try to stay on top of it, it is becoming more and more difficult. We have 4,000 tax delinquent properties in the city of Syracuse, and what that means is that there are 4,000 properties that if we wanted to tomorrow we could go in and take ownership of and just seize them. Now we have not done that because until recently we had no plan with what to do with them. So what we have done in cooperation and in partnership with the county is started into a very new venture called a land bank. And as a city, we're going to be moving forward with these tax delinquent properties and saying to people, you need to pay your taxes. And if you are having a hard time paying the amount through a tax trust, we're going to be much more flexible in what you have to pay, because the last thing we want to do is take people out of their properties who are living there. But at the same time, people have to pay their taxes. So we're going to be moving forward, being much stricter about enforcing people paying taxes, working with our land bank, with the idea being that we're going to take these vacant properties and tax delinquent properties and give them to an entity that we're a part of, who's going to focus on marketing them, taking care of them, renovating them, and doing something other than what has been done now, which is to just sit by and try to ignore them. Because it's a really very difficult issue, and vacant housing is not just an issue on the south side, it's an issue across the city. And it's one vacant house leads to 2 vacant houses, leads to the deterioration of a street, leads to the deterioration of a neighborhood, and crime, and all of those other things that you talked about go along with that. So we have a plan with our land bank to move forward on doing that, and you're going to see and read and hear about how we are moving forward with making people pay taxes, moving forward with taking care of these properties, asking the council to work with us to put these properties into a land bank so that the land bank can spend money on marketing them, taking care of them, upkeep, all of those things that we have ignored. Yes, ma'am.
As far as the vacant properties, we know that is an issue throughout Syracuse. But what about the occupied eyesore? Some people live in properties that are just terrible looking. What are you doing to those homeowners as far as keeping up their property? I'm a homeowner, I live right on the corner, and I was just wondering, what do you do about the landlords, the people who are renting out these properties and they look terrible?
Well, there's a number of things that we do, and there's kind of different categories of how dilapidated properties, occupied dilapidated properties happen. So let me first talk about families who, for one reason or another, run into hard times and can't take care of their porches falling off, or they get a hole in the roof and they just can't afford to go to a bank and get a loan to take care of that. We have programs through home headquarters, and we have worked with banks to establish low-interest loans, microloans, small face amount loans to help people do that. And part of the money that we have used to do that has been from the federal government, and part of it has been through the banks that we talk to and say you have to have these programs. The federal government is cutting back on that money, and so that pool of loans, or the amount that's available, now is generally gone the day that you apply for those loans. It's gone. I have also worked with our local banks to say to them, the number one loaner of money to people who own property in the city of Syracuse is home headquarters. And home headquarters does a phenomenal job. But what that means to me is that the bankers have walked away from this city. Because there's no Key Bank, there's no First Niagara, they're not competing. And so I have talked to those banks about the fact that they have to give us more money in order to help support these programs, number one, and number two, that they have to be active in our neighborhoods and start loaning to people. And we've seen some more activity in that area, and as our economy gets better, you're seeing people loaning more money and then becoming part of the community once again. There is an issue of people who are absentee landlords in the city of Syracuse and rent out property and will try to take advantage of people, particularly people who have vouchers. What we've been doing in those cases is working with the county who hands out the vouchers to come up with a program so when we know if a landlord is taking advantage of people's property or putting them in substandard housing, we have a program to take care of them and to penalize them with the county. So we're doing that as well. And finally, what we're doing is we're citing people. And we spend a lot of time citing people. I spend a lot of time driving my code enforcement office crazy, taking pictures of my BlackBerry and sending to them and saying, you've got to clean up this trash, and then you got to cite them, and if they don't pay in 24 hours, bill them for it on their taxes. So we're doing a lot of that too. And our hope is that as more and more people take care of their property, it becomes infectious, and more people realize. Again, if the sense of it is that the city doesn't care, and your neighbor doesn't care, then why should you care? And what we are doing is saying we care about it, and we're going to move forward and enforce it, and we're expecting everybody else to do that too. But we only have so many resources. We only have so many code enforcement officers. We can cut and clean 4,000 tax delinquent properties, or we can cite people who put garbage out or leave garbage out for more than 24 hours. There are lots and lots of needs, and we try to balance them. We have trash crews going out all the time.
I'm sorry, Mayor, did you come this way?
Yes.
You must have seen it, and it's
Yeah.
everywhere.
And it's particularly, that's part of the reason why we had the press conference about, because it's not just on Midland Avenue, it's all across the city. It's part of why we had the press conference and really pressured our state legislative delegation to get the state involved so we could clean up the highways. Because the highways were disgusting. And part of why when I announced these summer meetings, I asked people to join us an hour earlier to help clean up the parks. We were Tuesday in Thorndon Park, and my director of administration found 2 tires that she carried with her to get cleaned up. The issue of garbage is not just a government issue. It's not that we don't have enough people cleaning it up. We could probably always have more people. We can't afford to have more people cleaning it up. The frustrating part is we go through and clean it up, and 2 hours later it's disgusting. And when you start to look at where it is, it's by corner stores, it's wrappers from Doritos, it's sodas, it's all sorts of stuff. So it's got to be a mentality in this community that we stop treating our city like a garbage can, and/or, that we stop expecting that we can just hire more and more people to clean up all of our garbage. We've got to start to say to people and ourselves, we're going to clean up, we're going to do it. And I'll tell you another thing, because at first, when I first became mayor, it still drives me crazy. I thought that the problem was we didn't have enough trash cans. It's not the problem. People walk by, if there's a trash can 5 feet away, I've seen it happen. And I've yelled at people, I have been strongly confrontational with people about it. I'll tell you an example. My staff is here, they almost fell out of the car when I did this. We're on Syracuse University for an event, I think for an event with the governor. We're driving down by the fraternities, walking by the fraternities to the car, and I see one of the workmen take a cigarette butt and flick it on the street. And I made the police officer stop the car, because we were in the car. I got out of the car, I walked up to him, I said, hey buddy, I know you're a hard-working guy. I can see that right now, it's hot, it's sunny, but don't treat my city like an ashtray. And he was stunned. And I said, I'm not going to say anything to your bosses, I'm not going to get crazy about it, but don't do that. And my expectation is that he won't do that again. Now maybe I just have to think that in order to function every day, but that's the kind of stuff that people just are doing. Downtown, I see smokers doing it all the time. I don't mean to pick on smokers, but they do it all the time with cigarette butts. I see, and every time I go into a school and I talk to children, one of the things I talk to them about is, if you're in a park, in our beautiful parks, you're going to our swimming pools, I want you to make sure that if you have a juice box or if you have Doritos, that you throw it in the trash. Don't treat our parks like a garbage can. Don't expect other people to come up. Now, so we'll send, and again, I send DPW crews all the time, out particularly near schools, because you see lots of trash around schools, and to me it's a tragedy to have that happen. We have crews out all the time doing it, and it's really frustrating. So it's going to be up to all of us to make sure that we all maintain a standard of behavior, and when we see other people not living up to that standard, we say in an appropriate way, hey, come on, this is my city too. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I agree with you on that, and I do approach people. I live on a corner on Keene-on-Creek Boulevard. We have people, and I don't know if they live in the city or not, but they will come and they will bring their bags of trash and dump them around the creek. They bring their tires, they bring their TVs. I mean, if I see them, and I say, I'm going to take your license plate number because this is not a trash can. So we have a lot of that.
Oh yeah, and I guarantee you they don't live in the city. Because if they lived in the city, they'd put the stuff out by the curb and we'd pick it up. I mean, I have friends who live in the suburbs who say, you could put a nuclear reactor on the curb in the city of Syracuse and we pick it up and put it in the trash. You're right, people are dumping in the city, and we have evidence of it, and we have videotape of it, and you're going to see a lot more information about that because we are not going, now that we have hard and fast evidence that we have gone to the police department with it, we're going to start making examples of people.
Is there anything you can do about basketball hoops in the streets? They're taking over our streets on the Southside. I got one in front of my house. You can wake up at 9, 10 o'clock at night, they're still playing basketball.
You know what? I'll tell you. Is there something we could do about it? Sure. Is there something that I'm going to do about it? Probably not, because I'd rather have kids playing basketball in places that they feel like they're safe than taking things away from them and then saying that they don't have anything else to do. Now, and if it gets to the point where they are loud and obscene or inappropriate for a neighborhood at a certain time of night, please tell us that and we'll take care of that. But kids got to do something, and kids feel safe in their neighborhoods, on their streets, and I'd rather have them playing basketball than hanging out in corners.
We got 2 playgrounds. I was on Pleasant. We got 3 basketball hoops on Pleasant Ave.
And
you got a playground at the school, you got a playground at the end of Pleasant.
And I'm glad that, by the way, that we do have all those facilities, but I'll tell you from the children that I know and the parents that I know, they'd rather have them on their street playing where they can look out their window and see them or sit on their front porch and watch them. And I can't say I disagree with them. Yes, sir.
I just want to ask a question about the fiscal soundness of Syracuse. I'm here in Scranton is paying people minimum wage and governor of Wisconsin is doing all these cutbacks, and I hear about this fiscal cliff that's supposed to be coming in the winter. That's what I like to see around the elections when a bomb and a Romney run. How is Syracuse to handle all this if we got to do something about this trillion dollar deficit in America? So how is it going to affect us locally in Syracuse, New York?
I want to thank you for asking the question, and I did not plant that question. I want everyone to know. It's a genuine question that came up on its own. We are fine this year. Our budget situation is very strong this year. We've got good ratings from the bond raters. We have a balanced budget. We're moving forward with doing the things that we need to do to function as a city. You know, that doesn't mean that I won't be trying to press the council to stay focused on making sure that we have enough fire trucks. We buy police cars and we buy dump trucks and the kind of things that we do where, you know, sometimes the council gets reluctant to do it because of this news. So we're fine this year. Next year will be a tough year, but we'll be okay. It's year 3. If we do nothing as a city, 3 years from now we'll be bankrupt.
Right.
But we're not alone in that.
No, I know.
Yonkers is facing a $500 million deficit next year. Our deficit, depending on how you think about it and how you ask the questions, is like $30 million. So I, along with the mayor of Rochester, Albany, and Yonkers, have been very active in going to the state and saying, you know what, you created these problems. Our problems are created by exponentially large pension costs. You know, our pension costs are going up $15 million at a time. If we raise taxes 2%, we get $600,000. You can't do that. Our healthcare costs continuing to increase exponentially. So what we as mayors have said to the state leadership is, we've got real problems on our hands. We provide real services to people. People expect, if you think about it, and what I say, this drives my state colleagues crazy, but I always say it. If you ask people, a room like this, what service does your state provide? They'll think and scratch their head and say, well, maybe I get my driver's license through the state. If you say to them, what service does your city provide? They will not only be able to start, go all the way down to the end, they'll be able to tell you what Mayor Miner is doing well and what she's not doing well at, and how they tell her regularly what to do better at. So, arresting bad guys, putting fires out, plowing streets, picking up trash, all those kind of very basic things to our quality of life. So the answer is, as a group of mayors, we are much stronger together, and that the state needs to be part of the solution, and the state will be part of the solution. I'm going to make sure that that happens, and that's what we're doing to move forward. But I also want to tell you that the way government is structured now is going to be very different from the way it will look in 3 years. If the federal government continues to cut back, and if we as Central New Yorkers continue to allow our congresswomen to cut back on housing money, to cut back on aid for refugees, to cut back on education, to cut back on all of those things, then, and at the same time, the state turns its back on us, it's going to be very, very tough. But I think we have a state leadership that recognizes the problem. We have very good, smart, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, mayors across the state. We're going to move forward, we're going to try to solve the problem, but it's going to mean difficult choices and things are going to change across the board. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
As police presence, now in some cities like New York City, bigger cities, you see cops walking the beat all the time. It's just part of what they're doing. They're walking the street, they're on their bikes. Every once in a while, they see the cops on their bike or walking the beat. Why is there not more police presence in, like, walking down Midland or Salina, or just police presence, just walking the beat? Why do we not have that?
Walking the beat is the most expensive way to police, because you can't cover as many calls as you can in a car. And so we have to make sure that we have police officers who are very mobile. And so at certain times, at certain places, we do have beats that are walked. But in other areas that have a lot of activity or high crime or shots fired, we need police officers in cars so they can go from one place to another. so that we can make sure that people get the kind of service that they need. And I will tell you, the way that we distribute our police officers is directly from the model that New York City uses. And that is, you have the most police officers where you have the most crime. And so that's how we distribute police officers. And the reason that you see more police officers walking in New York City is because it is more of a pedestrian-friendly city in certain block-to-blocks. But out in the outer boroughs, most of the cops are in cars driving around. And we have cops on bicycles. We have cops now, I think, are soon going to be on an electronic motorcycle for the creek walk. So that's how we're doing our resource distribution for police officers.